Where are they, the actual users, doing their work most of the time, multiple hours per day? And can you ergonomically meet them there? If that is in the CRM, then strongly consider that. Do that because it's better for the customer. Do not go look at building in a platform like HubSpot or Salesforce with the expectation that it's a magic unlock for distribution.
Welcome to Built for HubSpot, the show where we're exploring the stories of the companies and the people behind them who are investing in depth in the HubSpot ecosystem as a competitive advantage. Today, we're joined by Daniel Zarick, the co-founder and CEO of Arrows. And we're going to get into the story behind how Arrows deleted a third of their product to go all in on the HubSpot ecosystem and the impact that that's had on their product strategy and go-to-market motion. This series is presented by Ampersand, the deep integration platform that enables the best startups and AI agents to work seamlessly with platforms like HubSpot without dealing with the tedious maintenance and complexity of integrations at scale. Let's get into the conversation.
Arrows is a digital sales room collaborative onboarding tool for HubSpot. 3 years ago now was when we launched in the HubSpot marketplace for Arrows, and we made a big bet to delete a big chunk of Arrows and focus on the CRM. We really were looking at the product we had built, and we're wondering if we built it today from scratch, how would we build it? And we realized it would be a very CRM-centric, CRM-first product. What is the unique value that we provide? We are the collaborative space for your customers. We don't need to manage any of the commodity data layer, consolidating all the activity and the email communications and reporting and automations layer. We don't need to build all of that. That is done very well by the CRM, specifically HubSpot. What can we do uniquely well? We can do the collaborative part on top of that. And so we dramatically changed how we built the product. Instead of it extracting data out of the CRM into Arrows, and that's where you would do stuff. We actually said, we'll just layer this onto the CRM and connect there. And you do most things in the CRM. And when you want to collaborate or send something to the customer, you do it through Arrows. And that's been very good and very useful for our positioning, for our messaging, for our product capabilities. And then, downstream of that, together with you, we did a lot of market education around what Arrows does well, what HubSpot does well, and where those things meet and are better together in a way.
So there's a lot of products that start out with their own sort of special, unique thing, right? Like for Arrows, that's the sort of collaboration layer with the customer. And then later go and essentially try to replicate elements of the CRM so that people can stay in their tool and, keep, say, on platform, so to speak. What do you think is the difference or the challenge, for a company that's sort of maybe going down that path or thinking about we actually need to add more of these sort of CRM-y type features because we're getting requests for them? How do you think about sort of rationalizing that? Does it have to be as drastic as we delete the product and go all in here? What's the sort of decision framework for thinking through that?
I would say, for where we were at the time, we were fairly early as a business, very early in revenue, incredibly early. I had raised some funding, had a team, but we were very small. We were amazingly resource constrained at the time. We had to pick where to put our energy. But even more importantly, it was where do customers want to do the work? And we were kind of imagining if we had the best dashboard view with reports and the best automation system and all the data that you could imagine wanting in the system and a Kanban view or list view and all the right filters and searching mechanisms that you would have in a CRM dashboard or an Airtable or one of these tools. We could have all of that, and we were people still wouldn't, for our customers, most cases would not want to go log into Arrows for that. I'm the CRO, I'm the CEO, I'm the VP of success. Where do I want to go look at reports about what's happening in my onboarding process or what's happening with the customers I just closed last month? Are they being onboarded successfully this month? I'm going to want to look at the CRM. The product more and added more resources and we are and have brought parts of the things that were in the CRM or that we would lean on HubSpot for. We've brought those into Arrows. Part of that is decoupling ourselves a little bit from being solely built for HubSpot. Part of that is, we look at the depth of integration as a place to prototype stuff. So, you want an automation to move your cards and your pipeline forward as customers complete tasks inside the Arrows plan. Your HubSpot pipeline can move forward with the data we sync in and you create a HubSpot automation. Now that automation, that workflow ends up being really complicated in HubSpot and hard to maintain. we could replicate that functionality in a very simple, purpose-built way inside Arrows, and we've done that. And over time, we'll do that with reporting and other things where it's just really complicated to actually set up in HubSpot, and we can build a more purpose-built version in Arrows. But it really, I think, comes down to what your customers need and where they are, and meeting them where they are and where they want to do the work. Like, where are they in the flow of the work? And that, for us, was mostly HubSpot with our customers.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think it gets into sort of a really interesting point that I know I've been thinking about a lot about recently, which is as you're building more deeply for the CRM or for customers who are sort of doing more of that task. I think a lot of companies it's easy to forget that customers are doing more than just the thing that they do with your product during their day. How do you think about the integration when it comes to sort of, this is product functionality or sort of new capabilities that we're giving to our customers versus this is something that is actually a growth mechanism for us and helps us better activate customers on the features that we ultimately want them to use. I mean, the workflow example is good, right? It's complex in HubSpot. We can sort of short circuit some of that stuff in the Arrows product. How do you think about that sort of generally when you're making trade-offs?
Yeah, a question comes down to how likely do we think 50 or 60+% of Arrow's customers who pay for it today are going to use this or need this in this way? 50, 60% of Arrow's customers likely want their onboarding pipeline inside HubSpot to update with progress made in the onboarding plans. And they want that to be reflected in the CRM. We need to make that as easy and obvious and low lift as possible to set that up anytime you use Arrows. And, until we proved that to be true or until we could resource that project, it was just easier to push the data into HubSpot and create some content that showed them how to do it. And then in many cases, us or partners would go set that up for them. And then we'd finally hear, oh, this is breaking or whatever, it'd fall apart. I think the thing that's interesting is, like app cards inside HubSpot are an interesting surface area where you can build a lot of cool stuff and a lot of functionality, but they're actually meaningfully annoying and painful to go configure and set up. Like, it's not something where it used to be you'd install Arrows and then like an app card would show up in certain objects. Now that's not true. You have to have somebody with certain permissions. They need to go to the record customization view. You need to do all these things, consider how you want to use it. And they're adding more customization soon. So it's like going to be more complicated how you do that. But once you've configured it, it means the people on your team are more likely to use Arrows day to day because it's ergonomically right there in the right sidebar, the middle pane, and I'm going to use it more. So that's the trade-off. There is a version where we'd love to own the UI day to day that people interact with, and we could do more with it. We will take the trade-off of building a limited functionality that somebody can interact with if they're more likely to have a higher frequency of interaction because it's in the pane of glass that they're already interacting with, like the deal or record in HubSpot. So I don't know, that's where it kind of comes down, and we try to move both forward, but usually it's, can we solve this in a HubSpot CRM-centric way first? How far down the path of solving that pain does that get us? And then, if we have to solve it inside the Arrows pane of glass, then we'll do that second.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think it's interesting when you think about the complexity, also the layered complexity that comes with a lot of these things, right? Like, I think one of the big advantages of being able to push data to sync data between an external tool and a CRM like HubSpot is that you then enable all of the functionality inside of HubSpot. Yeah. And I think this is a challenge that a lot of companies or a lot of apps that are trying to build into HubSpot ecosystem face is that HubSpot is a broad product, doesn't necessarily name anything specifically for the use case that your customers are trying to do at any one time. And pushing the data in is sort of nice. You have to build less, but it comes with the complexity or the sort of mental complexity of like configuration, which I guess it's a double-edged sword in some ways, and that they're like mentally having to configure it also makes it flexible. Like, how do you think about that for a product like HubSpot where you have such a vast range and like user ability, maturity, awareness of features?
It's tough because I think, what has also happened in the 3 years that we've been building for HubSpot is their integration capabilities and their platform broadly has gotten more flexible / complex, right? Like, I think you outlined it perfectly well. It is more complex, there's more capabilities. That is very freeing and empowering because I can do a lot more, but then I don't get as much out of the box. And it's not just like one click, easy, fast, unified, as they like to think that they are. And in many ways they are, but it's like easy-ish, fast-ish, unified, mostly unified. And so with arrows, what is interesting is throughout this year, there's already some features of the integration landscape in HubSpot that have changed. There's more that will continue to come out like throughout the next year, where if we were building the arrows integration today, we might be building it quite different than we did 3 years ago. We have to decide, do we make big changes to map to that new model that is now more free and capable, or do we stick with our existing model, which makes it easier and faster to get to value in a more structured way, but then it requires certain trade-offs of you can't do XYZ with arrows in HubSpot, even though you might have a HubSpot setup that would make that like a preferred route. And I'm being vague on purpose, but because I'm not sure what's like, you never know what's live or what HubSpot's actually launched. But, there will be like other ways to attach arrows to objects or use cases in HubSpot that are maybe more flexible, but just don't work out of the box and require a RevOps person or agency to actually configure it. And today we just don't make it possible because we want it to be, a very simple data model, like an arrows plan or room connects to a deal or a ticket or whatever object. And it's just like, I can point to that and it always works the same. We basically try to meet customers where they are. So like we just launched support for the service object, the new from the object library that some people are aware of. That object library launched right before Inbound. And so we launched support effectively the first week of April 2025. And we resisted it for a while, not because we didn't want to support it, but because HubSpot didn't support all the features of objects. It still doesn't support all the features of those objects. There's a couple things missing, but way more is supported now. And also customers weren't really adopting it. So we're like, we could build support in September, but no real customer would have used a service object with arrows until February this year. And once they started showing up in a handful per month, we're like, okay, we can go spend the 2 days it takes to support this object. But, it's not just the integration support. It's you have to have, and this is what we try to tell HubSpot, like we have to have help center articles that explain the nuance of these different objects. We have to have training materials. We have to train our own team, including sales and success and marketing, the nuances about the different ways you can integrate arrows in HubSpot. And so, it's great that they're pushing things forward. In a lot of ways, it makes things more complicated for our apps and customers. So we're in an interesting, I think, in-between stage where everybody's kind of dancing and figuring it out, pushing things forward.
Yeah, you sort of alluded to this a little bit, the sort of change. Whenever you're investing this heavily in an ecosystem, in an integration, in a platform, the platform is also moving, right?
Yeah.
And things are changing. And I think that not just on the product and the integration side of like, oh, they changed an API and things broke, right? Or like they introduced a breaking change. We now have to do work to go handle that. But on the go-to-market side too, there's their different positioning. That I was talking to somebody this morning about, Inbound 2022, they announced the keynote was the connected platform, right? And sort of finally now, second iteration of the customer success workspace, sort of all these things coming through that is shifting their positioning, all the AI stuff, of course. How do you think about navigating that, both from how do we plan for ourselves when we're so dependent, from we are functionally tied to this company or this platform, but also from messaging to customers on what to expect or how to think about things?
There's also this aspect of solutions partners who are generally at the leading edge and most aware of all the capabilities of the platform. And then there's the broader customer base who is 6 to 12 or 18 months behind what the platform's capable of. We both like to be a launch partner and at the leading edge of what's happening because we want to inform how HubSpot and the platform is thinking about it and make sure that app partners like us are taken into consideration, while also we mainly focus on what's best for our business and for our customers who are showing up today and using it today. And so we won't over-invest time or resources into something that doesn't contribute directly to the business. So feedback we often have for HubSpot is make sure you're thinking about the economic incentives of the app partners on your platform. Like, why are we going to build on this new API or this new integration layer? Like when app cards launch, we can only justify the product and engineering resources that map to the either customer value or economic results that we expect to get from this. Well, it didn't seem like we didn't have any belief that there was going to be massive economic results for being a launch partner with app cards, but we did think it was better for customers, and it unlocked some use cases like Arrow's app cards being on custom objects. So we're like, okay, we will do that. We will spend the couple of weeks that's worthy of that trade-off. So, frankly, we will not and have never planned to only be on HubSpot. So at some point when we start to prioritize more of building for other platforms, it will then be a consideration of what's the economic outcome we expect from building for Salesforce or ServiceNow or whomever versus continuing to invest in our HubSpot integration and whatever new capabilities exist there. That is, I think, true with most apps. If you're PandaDoc or Aircall or whoever, you are similarly, like we said, resource constrained, and your engineering team that focuses on integrations can only provide so much new time or capacity for work in that new integration. Why are we going to do it here? It has to come back to us in some way. Either that is like some massive new customer value or new installs and new customers, new pipeline, something that we did not have before.
One of the things that I'm curious about, obviously you have a ton of perspective now, sort of with the 3 years in the ecosystem, navigating the different things in that period,
Right.
but not as much time as, like an OG, like an org chart hub or, something like that. What do you think is the biggest, or what's been the most different from what you expected? When we sort of like, okay, we're going to bet on HubSpot as this is the priority for, some period of time. We're making this bet. Did you have expectations about what that would look like both from a partnership perspective, but also from a like what the business looks like perspective?
Yeah, I'd say, HubSpot today has 250,000 customers or so, and they've stated the goal to get to double of that in some number of years. And that feels very realistic. When we launched on the marketplace, I think there were 170,000 customers. We've got 1,400 installs today. I think our expectation, and it's still true, that there would be a stronger distribution within the platform. Most of our distribution comes from doing marketing kind of outside of the platform, outside of the app marketplace, right? We do a little bit, and there are other apps that do better within marketplace distribution because they are hitting kind of product areas or keywords that people go to the marketplace to search for. But regardless of somebody nobody's going and looking for onboarding or digital sales room necessarily in the marketplace. It's very, very few. And so without that, there's not a strong way that HubSpot has to match a very strong app like Arrows that adds a ton of value to the platform. There's not a way for them that they have a mechanism to match the customers that are using HubSpot for onboarding with the pipeline named onboarding and a customer success workspace with an app like Arrows that would make that more valuable to them. They just do not have a will or an interest or a capability to do that matching right now, and maybe never will. So I think that's the number one, probably biggest surprise. We thought, you and I and the whole Arrows team at the time for that first year thought that they would have even if they didn't at the time, that they would have made more progress towards that. And I think there are probably teams at HubSpot that think that they are making progress towards that. And I would say that they are misguided in their likely impact that they think they will have. And I would say, I would even go as far that those teams that are thinking about that stuff are thinking about how do we match the 1,800 apps in the marketplace to the 250,000 customers, instead of thinking how do we match the 100, 200 apps that actually build it in a HubSpot-centric, value-driven for HubSpot customers way to the 250,000 customers. Like there should be tiering within the marketplace more than they have now.
Yeah, I'm curious while we're on the topic. There are 1,800 or so apps in the marketplace, like you mentioned. Obviously, there's a lot of HubSpot integrations that are not in the marketplace outside of that, and we don't know install numbers or whatever on those. But you mentioned already that the number of installs that Arrows is at today as a top app for service, as all the sort of signals that it's a top HubSpot app, the install number is relatively low compared to expectation of where it might be against the customer base.
Expectation / like what we think is the number of customers who have a need or desire to solve this and don't know to go look for it.
Maybe sort of penetration into the HubSpot customer base type. But also that the ratings of apps in the marketplace is not particularly high. Like the top 150 is like 3.7 or something. Not particularly impressive. As you're talking to somebody who's maybe considering whether they already have an app or they're thinking about building an app that integrates deeply with HubSpot, how do you sort of rationalize that? Or like, what was the approach that you would suggest to them, sort of given where the marketplace numbers are at?
I think it would be very dependent on their app, the business, and who their customer is. If you have a user and a customer who treats the CRM as the source of truth, and the CRM needs to be, that's where the workflows and data and reporting is, then do as much as you can to push your data there. Recognize that you generating the data and owning the data doesn't mean you need to be the platform, the UI of which they day-to-day look at that data, because you want to solve the problem for them in a place where they're actually interacting with that data in a higher frequency, more capable way, and mashing it up with other data from other systems, like Arrow's onboarding data next to your sales pipeline. That is valuable and would be very, very hard, difficult, maybe impossible for us to do inside Arrow's. And so I would say start there with like who your customer is and where the data needs to be and where the workflow is. Like, where are they doing their day-to-day, the actual users doing their work most of the time, multiple hours per day, and can you ergonomically meet them there? If that is in the CRM, then strongly consider that. I would say do that because it's better for the customer. Do that first for that. Do not go look at building in a platform like HubSpot or Salesforce with the expectation that it's a magic like unlock for distribution. It is a way to start a partnership sort of motion and experience where you then have to work with them to develop a partnership. You have to work with the other partners in that ecosystem to develop partnerships. And it is a multi-year process to, reap the benefits or rewards of that from a distribution and scale perspective. But you have to start by having like a strong product that suggests or creates the desire for people to even work with you.
Yeah. I do want to ask you about what everybody has been talking about since, HubSpot's been making a big deal about it. It's been a big focus of inbound, or maybe unsurprisingly. Arrows has also started building AI features and seemingly trying to avoid calling them AI features for the sake of it. How do you think about sort of the changing space that we're sort of living in, working in, building products in, and sort of how that affects the CRM, right? Like, and the integration with the CRM, right? Like, there's a lot of talk, and you mentioned it earlier about sort of the difference between being a launch partner and the things that solutions partners know about what's technically possible in HubSpot, and like where the sort of the median customer is maybe. How do you think about that in the context of AI and sort of what you're building and your approach there?
I'd say and I think HubSpot is following risk to this a little bit right now, which is the marketing is far ahead of the capabilities of the product in terms of AI and agents. The talk about it is far ahead of what's possible and what people are actually doing. When you go talk to sales teams or success teams, and it's like, what are you doing? What AI things are you doing today? What are you using in your everyday? It's mostly I have a call recorder that has AI note summaries and I have ChatGPT. Like, that's about it. Maybe they have like a Copilot type, not HubSpot, but like a Copilot type assistant they've bought and kind of configured internally for some specific like help center sort of stuff. But like a lot of it's ChatGPT, help me write this email, do whatever. Now, marketing teams, I think, are using AI stuff a lot more, content editing, content production, images, like all sorts of stuff. But again, like it all comes back to like it's ChatGPT, Claude, a couple tools, AI note takers, maybe some automation things like Zapier, Relay, like some Clay, obviously a lot of cool Clay. Like most teams are not using it because it is not like easy. It's not ergonomic. It's not customizable enough also. Like, and I think those primitives or those sort of like, UX affordances have not been designed and built yet. And so that's what it's like really awesome to go talk about what's possible, but you can't actually get those results in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it feels like we're a little bit in the early days of like building websites where you have to build them with HTML and you have to figure out a server and like you have to like host it. It's like we're in the very like technical stage of the AI type stuff in terms of like actual activation and building like a real workflow around stuff, which is where to the UX affordance's point, like the ChatGPTs, the Claudes are winning because it's easy. Like anybody can just go in, you talk to it or chat with it rather than having to actually build something, which is sort of the next.
And I'd say most people are really bad at Googling, right? Like they don't know how to use Google well. They just go type their question or whatever. They don't know how to use all the advanced features and think about what sort of keywords or structure of my query would actually get me the right results that I'm looking for, and then how to even parse the results that are returned back to me to ignore all the ads and get to the fourth one that actually is the right resource and not the SEO generated resource. And now you put that into an LLM like ChatGPT that's an open text box, and it is like infinitely more powerful and complex and hard to get the right results. Most people like write their question into something like ChatGPT, get the result, and then like stop, or maybe ask a couple questions, but like do not know how to wield it as a very powerful, complicated tool that it is. And it's an incredible tool and we use it constantly. I think a lot of software, and where we've tried to do with Arrows, is that most people, I just want to do my job better, get the outcome better. I want it to be easier. I don't want to think about the query. I don't want to think about the prompt, and I don't want to think about refining it. I just want the result. And so that's where we've tried to make Arrows. So you plug it into HubSpot. We get all of the data that you have about your deals inside HubSpot, and we help make competent, easy suggestions for what you should update in your sales room and the emails you should write based on the situation of that deal. And, as much as possible, it should feel like in the background. Now, we want you to know it is AI generated because we want you to know whether or not you should trust it and refine it and whatever. There's a UX reason for that, not a marketing reason for why we kind of have some colors or whatever that make it feel like AI in the product. And so that's how we think about it. And there's a lot more we're going to continue doing with that, where the better we can understand what's going on with your deals and help you understand and take the right action, all of that relies on the data that's in HubSpot, in the CRM, the other apps that you're connecting in, the data they're pushing in. So Fathom or Grain call notes sync into your HubSpot deal. Arrows pays attention to them and makes a suggestion in your sales room off of that. Like that is all very possible today when you have built a very integration heavy, data syncing heavy sort of integration, and then now build the systems and engine on top of that to understand the context of what's going on. So I think HubSpot as a platform will do more there to enable those sort of things. It will do more to get better context about what's happening with Arrows, so it knows how to lean on that for Copilot stuff or summaries. And, I think what I hope that they figure out is like, what are the affordances in the product that make it both easy for the reps to use and very powerful and capable for the solutions partners and RevOps folks to edit and shape it to work the way that my business needs it to work versus your business, which needs it to work differently.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting sort of nuance when you're talking specifically around the sort of mass market AI tools, if you will. There's sort of no specificity built in, right? Yeah. Whereas a tool like HubSpot has that ability. They do have a unique data set for you as a portal about the context that exists for your customers, the things you care about.
There's a way that you can take a Gong or Fathom or Grain transcript, dump it in ChatGPT and say, what are the next steps, and get an approximation of a solid answer. But there's a lot of different ways you can structure that, give it context about the deal, give it context about what's going on, give it context about previous interactions, give it context about what's in the sales room, help it understand the goals that you have for the sales room and the structure of the next steps. You make sure the next steps are formatted in a way that helps your customer that you're sharing them externally understand them versus internally for my manager. Like there's so many other things you can do in there. And that's what Arrows is good at, about putting together. And then the workflow UX of how we present that to the sales rep and let them make a decision or edit it before updating it in the room. That is like the work around AI tools right now. And right now, most teams will just go dump it into ChatGPT and give me next steps if they think to do that, which is already its hard thing. I'm busy. I'm jumping between calls. Do I have the time to think about, should I use it for this and go pull the data from that system, pump it over here? So that's where, I think there's a lot of value for people. There's the like derogatory AI wrapper sort of thing out there, but I think actually that's where a lot of value accrues because it's very hard and most people are not good about thinking about how to connect these systems together. I actually think most of these AI workflow engine sort of builders, like Zapier type things, aren't going to be the answer either. Very few people are Stuart or me who would maybe go spend a couple hours building the perfect workflow for us. Most people just want the workflow that works pretty good for their system.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that AI has not changed, will not change, which has always been true of the best software, right? Is that it's not about the product, it's about the outcome that you can deliver.
Yeah, most people are not magically going to figure out how to articulate what they want a piece of software to do and then ask it to do that in a way that they are willing to stay on top of and maintain. They still want Arrows and Account Scout and HubSpot to show them what is possible and create the right thing for them that they didn't know to ask for, but give them just the right amount of ability to edit it and customize it for their specific needs or shape it to work for them.
Yeah. So obviously Arrows made this big bet on the HubSpot ecosystem on going deep as a differentiator, but also as something that enables ultimately customers to do more because they are more deeply integrated with the CRM. Like, what are some of the daily motions that happen at Arrows because of that maybe just sort of wouldn't exist if you're in a company that either is its own destination or is spread across many things? Like, how does that focus help day to day?
Yeah, that's a great question, because that ends up leading to like a topic we were talking about recently is like even our demos. When you come and book a demo of Arrows, we spend a lot of the demos, sometimes even start the demo in HubSpot. When we eventually add Salesforce and others, we might very likely start the demo in that CRM. Whereas we've talked about like doing demos of other products and they've done the whole demo, even though we told them we were a HubSpot customer, they've done the whole demo in Salesforce and we go, okay, how does it work in HubSpot? And they go, oh, it works the same way. We're like, well, like probably maybe if your integrations have feature parity with each other, I hope, but I don't know if I trust you and believe you that it actually does work the same way. And the nuances of how these systems work are quite different. So for Arrows specifically, compared to a lot of apps, like it means from sales to marketing to customer success to product and design and everything else, like every aspect of our company understands CRM, how to use it pretty well, what's possible, what's capable, the pros and cons of the data that's accessible, how you would set up reports and workflows and pipelines or whatever, and how do you demo around it and do content around it. And that just like kind of filters through everything we create and put out there, from a new feature being built and like, what does this new feature have to do with our HubSpot integration? Or how does this change? Like it's every feature that's built from the design standpoint, from the moment code's even starting to be written. We're wondering if there's a way for it to affect the HubSpot integration or do something to how it's tested, making sure we're testing it inside the parts of the HubSpot integration that connect to that. So it really like filters through all aspects of the company. And ultimately, we feel like that is more empowering for customers and the partners we work with and is felt through using the product, even though we are not always like the best at articulating it, because there are certainly competitors of ours that are similar-ish tools that have made other prioritizations and built other parts of their product. And then a customer asked them, how does this integration work compared to Arrows? We saw theirs, it was good. And they go, oh, it does all the same stuff. And I go, no, it doesn't do all the same stuff. Like on the surface, you will squint and think it does the same stuff. But in reality, how it does it, how it works, how it meets you ergonomically, how it empowers your RevOps team or your partner agency who's setting things up or configuring things for you is dramatically different. And you won't feel that necessarily until a month in or 6 months in when you are constrained or unable to get certain data out of it or something. And, so that's where it's both a benefit and then sometimes a challenge because frankly, people don't have the ability to fully evaluate the differences of these things yet, though they desire like having a better integration.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to leave it. Who should go and look at Arrows beyond just like, oh, you use HubSpot and you're looking for a digital sales room or onboarding plan?
Odds are they're not looking for a digital sales room, as I mentioned to you before, but I think the thing that you should think about is if you have a sales team using a sales pipeline in HubSpot, you should absolutely connect Arrows to that. And I think you'll be surprised by how much it makes your team's life much easier, makes your buyer's life much better, allows you to maintain momentum through the whole sales pipeline, sales process over into the handoff into onboarding.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Built for HubSpot podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave us a review, leave us a comment wherever you're listening or watching. And Thank you so much, as always, to Ampersand for supporting this show. If you're looking for a way to improve the way that you integrate with HubSpot and you'd want to do it without the maintenance and overhead as you scale, definitely go and check out to Ian and the team over at Ampersand. I'll see you in the next episode.